All right, welcome back to the channel. Terence Crawford says that fighting Errol Spence Jr. right now would be a lose-lose proposition for him and encourages Errol Spence Jr. to take a tune-up. Let's talk about that and what that means in this video. All right, welcome back. So, Terence Crawford, the WBO welterweight champion, is speaking about the IBF and WBC welterweight champion, Errol Spence Jr., says that fight right now is a lose-lose proposition for him. So what does that mean, and why would he say that? The lose-lose for Terence Crawford is this: that if he loses to Errol Spence Jr., he loses his belt, right? But if he beats Errol Spence Jr., he looks like he beat a guy that was coming off of an auto accident, and people will not give him his credit. So that is the lose-lose, right? If he loses, if he loses the fight, he loses it. If he wins it, he doesn't really get credit for the win. It's just that he beat somebody that really wasn't all the way there, right? Now, that is something that I think is somewhat reasonable, but at the same time, I don't know, man. I don't know. I think he's already in that situation, whether or not he fights Errol Spence Jr. or not at this point in time in his career. So let's go through it. If Errol Spence Jr., if Terence Crawford does not fight Errol Spence Jr., what is going to happen? Right? What's going to happen is that the next guy that he fights, he's going to be in a lose-lose position with. Doesn't matter who it is. If he fights Kell Brook, he's in a lose-lose position. If he fights Sean Porter, in my opinion, it would be a win-win, right? A regular situation, but so they could consider it and say that's a lose-lose proposition for him too. And here's the loss, and here's not Sean Porter, but the other people that Terence Crawford would most likely fight. The Kell Brooks, the some version of Aegis Kalvanakis, or just assume that it's the same level of fighter that he's been fighting for the last 2 years. At this point in time, after having fought all of those guys that are of that caliber, any more people that Terence Crawford fights like that on that level is a lose-lose for him, because he could either lose the fight or people are not going to give him any credit for it because the guys are not on his level, and he continues to fight people that are not at a high level, therefore having people point fingers at him and say, look, man, you're bum bashing. You've been bum bashing for a couple years now, man. So either fight Errol Spence Jr., right? Who is not a bum, but you could say so what difference would it make if Errol Spence Jr. was in a car accident and he fought Terence Crawford? People would say that he wasn't all the way back, that he was a damaged fighter, that he was not on the level of Terence Crawford physically, mentally, skill-wise, whatever. They're just going to discount it because Terence Crawford because Errol Spence Jr. is quote unquote damaged from his car accident. What's the difference between that and him fighting, say, Alexander Putin, right? Alexander Putin, who I think is still the WBA regular champion, a guy that had tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs, but he's in the top-ranked stable. And he's a guy that I thought Terence Crawford I am sure, was on the list of the fighters that Bob Arum was going to put in front of Terence Crawford, along with Aegis Kalvanakis, because there's only a certain number of welterweights that are with Top Rank. But it's that fight, so him fighting, it would not help him at all fighting anybody other than Errol Spence Jr. And he wouldn't be in any different situation fighting anybody other than Errol Spence Jr. Except for maybe Manny Pacquiao, because everybody thinks already that he's not fighting anybody. So not fighting somebody that's coming off an injury, what's the difference? So for me, I don't buy that. I don't buy that as a reason for Terence Crawford to say, no, I don't want that Errol Spence Jr. fight right now. He should get a tune-up or two, and then I'll be ready. I don't buy it. I just think that's something that that's just a reason that he came out that really is just covering up. Not because he doesn't have to, but that's not the main reason. That might be something that is in the back of his mind, but that's not the main reason. The main reason that Terence Crawford doesn't want to fight Errol Spence Jr. next is for the reasons that Terence Crawford had mentioned before, reasons that were mentioned by Tim Cook from the PBC, and a reason that was mentioned by Derek James, who's the trainer for Errol Spence Jr. And that is this, that at this point in time, there is not enough money in the fight between Errol Spence Jr. and Terence Crawford for both of those fighters to get the money that they want. And if they actually had to force and push that fight to happen next, Errol Spence Jr. would have to get 70% of the purse, and Terence Crawford would have to take 30% and split 30% of that split that 30% with his promoter, Bob Arum. It's not going to happen. It wouldn't happen next for that reason, not because of Errol Spence Jr. being in some car accident. Now, and I say that because that did not stop him from fighting, didn't stop Terence Crawford from fighting Jose Benavides, and Jose Benavides' fight was less money, right? But it was the same situation. Jose Benavides had taken a shotgun blast to the knee. His knee was so blown out that he has not fought. First of all, walked into the ring with a knee brace on, and he has not fought since. Hasn't fought since. You might not see Jose Benavides in the ring ever again. That is a likelihood for Jose Benavides, because when you get shot in the knee when you get hit in the knee with a gunshot, and it gets blown out, dude, you're never going to be the same fighter again. So, but he took the Jose Benavides fight, right? He took the Jose Benavides fight, and he took the Jose Benavides fight for a lot less money than he would have taken an Errol Spence Jr. fight. So, I don't buy that's a real consideration for Terence Crawford. Now, as far as what's going to actually happen in this fight, I've been thinking about this as far as when the fight's going to happen. Now, there's issues about who can win the fight. That's one thing. But when the fight is going to happen and how it's going to happen, this is what I think is going to happen. I think that fight between Terence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. is much more likely to take place at 154 pounds than 147 pounds. That's my belief. I believe that that is very smart for Errol Spence Jr. And also, number two, I think that it's the only thing, because of the amount of time and the things that need to take place, I think that with the time frame, that is going to wind up being where Errol Spence Jr. is at that time. So, because if you look at Errol Spence Jr. and the situation around Errol Spence Jr., other than what took place, with the car accident, just take a look at the last couple fights that he's had and the difficulties that he has had making weights. Now, he's always made weight, but we know because we've got connections to their camp through Black Fight Fan TV. You can listen carefully to some of the things that are said about that were said out of that camp after the Mikey Garcia fight, after the Sean Porter fight, and that Errol Spence Jr. is spending a lot of his time and a lot of his energy in training camps, making sure that he is all the way down, that he can actually get down and make the weight. And he's not having a lot of time necessarily to work on strength and conditioning and and things like that to really make to do the things other than lose weight, get in the fat suit and the sweatsuit and come all the way down. And that losing all that weight weakens you. And I think that's what we saw in the fight with Sean Porter and in the fight with Mikey Garcia. It just appears as if it's a lot more difficult for him to make the weight. So at 154 pounds, right? he would be, I think at this point in time in his career, he would be more comfortable at 154 pounds. Definitely by the time the Terence Crawford fight happens, I think he'll be much more comfortable at 154 pounds, because he's going to have, you're probably going to take it, say it's at least another 6 months before he gets back in the ring. So say just 6 months from today, he fights Danny Garcia, and then 6 months after that, he fights Manny Pacquiao, right? And then he has a mandatory, because he'll have a mandatory in the IBF mandatory, and the IBF will strip you of your belt if you don't do that, if you don't take care of your mandatory in Abdukarev. So you have 3 fights that are lined up before the Terence Crawford fight at 6 months apiece. That's 18 months plus the training, the rest and the time to get for the Terence Crawford fight. That could push the Terence Crawford fight into 2022. At 2022, I don't think Errol Spence Jr., who's been fighting at 147 his whole career, is going to be able to take that, is going to be able to make that weight. So he'll move up, get a 154-pound belt after Jermall moves up, or Jermell Charlo will also move up. A lot of these 154s will move up, and then Errol Spence will go into the 154-pound division, could fight for any of the major belts in the 154-pound division. They will put him high in the rankings right away. Terence Crawford, same thing. Terence Crawford the day after tomorrow, if there wasn't for this virus, could go beat Teixeira for the 154-pound belt. I think that is where those guys are going to match up. And tactically speaking, for Errol Spence, it makes a lot more sense, because he comes in there much, being able to be his full size and full weight. It also gets him a little closer to Canelo Alvarez's weight, which I believe, based on logic, not based on any information that I've gotten, should be a goal of his, because they're roughly the same height. They're both tremendously popular fighters, and it's a fight that Canelo Alvarez would take that might do 2 million pay-per-views if Errol Spence Jr. keeps up everything right. So, anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think. And with that, I'm out. Peace.